Imagine being shown your own death before you are ever sick. You are 30 years old. You feel healthy. Your blood tests come back clean, and nothing hurts. But across the room, a doctor is watching another version of you grow older and fast forward. It has your face, your heart, your history, and on the screen, that other body is aging faster than any body should. In one future, its heart begins to fail. In another, a shadow appears on a scan, a tumor that does not yet exist in you. In another, it simply grows old and lives into its 90s. The doctor stops the simulation on the worst of these futures and says quietly, "This is what we think will happen to you." But it hasn't happened. It may never happen. What you are looking at is not your destiny. It is one path your body might take, out of thousands it could. This is a story about the year 2073, and about a machine we do not yet know how to build, but are slowly learning to. By 2073, the day you are born might also be the day a second version of you is switched on. Not a robot, not a clone. Something quieter, a simulation, a working copy of your body running inside a computer, built from your genome, your first scans, your blood, your family's medical history, the air around you, the way you live, and a steady stream of measurements gathered across your whole life. People come to call it a twin. And the strange thing about this twin is that it grows up alongside you. As you age, it ages. As you grow stronger, or sicker, so does it. But unlike you, it can be fast-forwarded. A doctor can push it days, years, even decades into the future. It can fall ill and recover 1,000 times in a single afternoon. It can try a treatment you have never taken and show what that treatment might do to a body exactly like yours. Before anyone gives you a real drug, or makes a real incision, or tells you to change your life, they can rehearse it first, on the version of you that lives inside the machine. To understand why anyone would want such a thing, it helps to see how medicine works today. For most of its history, medicine has learned from crowds. When a new drug is tested, it is given to thousands of people, and doctors watch what happens on average. That average becomes the advice, written into guidelines and handed to you in the waiting room. This is not a flaw. It has saved more lives than almost anything humans have ever made. But an average is a story about many people at once. It is not quite a story about you. Two people can walk in with the very same diagnosis and walk out toward completely different fates. The same drug soothes one and sickens the other. The same operation cures one and barely touches the next. Underneath the shared name of the illness, each body keeps quietly rewriting the ending. Medicine has always known this. It simply never had a way to see it in advance. That is what the twin promises to change. And to understand it, we need to talk about the machine at its heart. Something researchers call a world model. You already own one. When you reach for a cup near the edge of a table and catch it, you don't need to actually knock it off to know what would have happened. Some quiet part of your mind runs the moment forward. The cup tips, falls, shatters on the floor, and you see the future before it arrives. That inner simulator, the thing that lets you imagine consequences without living them, is a world model. For most of the history of artificial intelligence, machines could not do this. They could recognize things, a face, a word, a tumor in a scan. But recognizing is not imagining. A world model is the attempt to give a machine that second gift, not just to see what is, but to picture what happens next. The way it learns is by watching. Show it enough of how something changes over time, and it slowly builds an inner sense of the rules, not written out as equations, but absorbed, the way a child understands that dropped things fall long before anyone teaches them the word gravity. Once it has that inner sense, it can do two remarkable things. It can roll the world forward, step by step, into moments that have not happened yet, and it can be steered. You can ask it, "What if I do this?" and watch the consequence unfold. That is what separates a world model from an ordinary pattern spotter. A pattern spotter answers the question, "What have I seen before?" A world model answers a far harder one. What would happen if? This is why it differs so completely from something we already carry, a medical record. Your medical record is a kind of diary. It remembers what has already happened to you, the illnesses, the medicines, the numbers from last year's tests. It looks backward. It is a record of the past. A world model tries to do the opposite. Instead of storing what happened, it imagines what could happen next. It is less like a diary and more like a flight simulator, where a pilot can crash 100 times and walk away unhurt, learning from each one. Only here, the aircraft is your body, and the doctor is the pilot, searching for the one path that lands safely. So if a world model is simply a machine that imagines what happens next, why can't we build one for the whole body today? The honest answer is that we have, but only for small, tidy worlds. Today's world models can dream up the next few seconds of a video, or invent a playable corner of a video game, or capture a single organ, like a heart, beating on its own. Within those narrow walls, they are already astonishing. But a human body is not a narrow wall, and simulating one, across a lifetime, runs headlong into problems that our own bodies solve in silence. The first is simply staying right. A picture only has to look right once, in a single frozen moment. A body has to keep being right, moment after moment, for 70 years. And today's models drift. Ask one to run far into the future, and it behaves a little like a storyteller slowly forgetting their own characters. A detail slips here, a small error creeps in there, and because each imagined moment is built on top of the one before it, those tiny mistakes pile up. Over a few seconds, the drift is invisible. Over a lifetime, it becomes a fantasy. The real model would have to hold on to everything: a scar from childhood, a habit formed in your teens, a bone broken 30 years ago, and carry it all faithfully across the decades without letting it blur. The second problem is cause. Most of today's models learn what tends to happen together, not what makes what happen. It is the difference between noticing that umbrellas and rain appear at the same time and understanding that the rain is what sends people reaching for umbrellas. That sounds like a small distinction. It is not. The entire promise of the twin rests on it. To test a treatment, the model cannot merely have seen medicine and recovery show up together in old records. It has to truly grasp that the medicine is what caused the body to change. Cause, not company. And teaching that to a machine is one of the deepest unsolved problems in artificial intelligence. The third problem is holding a single person. Not an average patient assembled from millions of strangers, but you, your genome, your lifetime of scans, your blood chemistry, the readings from the watch on your wrist, all fused into one living whole that stays consistent as the years pass. Nothing we can build today can hold that much of one particular person together, for that long. And beneath all of it sits one final demand: honesty about the future. A body has no single fate, so the model must never offer one. It has to open its hands and show many possible tomorrows, this one likely, that one rare, and never once pretend to know which is real. So what would have to change by 2073 to close that distance? Not a miracle. A patient accumulation of things already being chased in laboratories right now. Far more computing power, far cheaper, and shaped specifically for biology so that thousands of possible futures can be run without pause. Models that can hold a single thread across enormous stretches of time without forgetting or drifting, remembering a childhood illness as clearly at 70 as at 7. Models built from the ground up to reason about cause and consequence, so that what if I change this becomes a question they can genuinely answer, instead of merely guessing from things that once happened to occur together. Models that can weave every kind of signal, genetic, chemical, physical, behavioral, into a single coherent picture of a person. And models trained not on one hospital's files, but on decades of quiet, continuous measurement gathered from millions of lives, slowly learning the long grammar of how bodies actually change. Every one of those is a straight line drawn forward from research that already exists in 2026. None of it asks for a new kind of physics. It asks for time and data and patience. And somewhere along that line, a world model could finally graduate from a few seconds of imagined video or a single simulated organ to a whole body, living out a whole life. By 2073, all of this is woven into a single quiet system running beside each person's life. One part keeps a living portrait of the body as it is right now: the organs, the immune system, the slow machinery of metabolism. Another part imagines how that portrait might change as the years go by. A third tests ideas against it: a new drug, a different dose, an operation, a change in how someone sleeps or eats or moves. Sensors keep the twin honest. Scans, blood tests, the wristwatch, the way you walk and the way you sleep. All of it flows back in, gently correcting the copy so it never drifts too far from the real you. And one last part does something almost philosophical. It refuses to give a single answer. Instead, it spreads many futures out like a hand of cards and quietly marks how likely each one seems. Doctors read those futures as evidence, not as commands. The final choice still belongs to people, and when it works, it feels like a kind of grace. A doctor can try hundreds of cancer treatments on your twin overnight and arrive in the morning holding the one most likely to save you with the least harm, before your real body has felt a single side effect. A surgeon can rehearse an operation 5 different ways before touching you once. A dose can be shaped to fit one particular person, instead of guessed from age and weight. A disease can be caught inside the twin years before it would ever have surfaced in you, early enough, sometimes, to turn it aside completely. You could even ask the machine about your own choices. What might another decade of poor sleep do to me? What if I finally stopped smoking? And it could answer, not with one future, but with several versions of you, branching away down different roads. For the first time, medicine could stop waiting for illness and start meeting it before it arrives. But there is a shadow inside this gift, and it does not come from the machine being wrong. It comes from people forgetting what it is. The twin only ever speaks in probabilities. It says, this might happen, this is likely, this is rare. But a probability is a slippery thing to hold, and there is a quiet temptation to hear it as something firmer, to hear might as will, to hear likely as certain. Slowly, without anyone deciding it, a forecast can harden into a verdict. Imagine the machine predicts that you have a high chance of a serious illness years from now. You have no symptoms, you feel fine, but the number exists and numbers travel. An insurer sees it and raises what you pay. An employer sees it and quietly decides you are not worth training for the long road ahead. A bank sees it and hesitates over a loan that would outlast its confidence in you. You have done nothing. You are sick with nothing. And still, doors begin to close, not because of what you are, but because of what a simulation believes you might one day become. This is a new kind of unfairness. For all of history, people have been judged by what they have done, or by the condition they carry now. This would judge them by a future that has not happened and may never happen at all. And here is the cruelest part. A frightened person changes. If you truly believe your body is doomed, you may stop reaching for the things that make a life worth living. You may pull away from love. You may abandon your plans. You may live braced against an illness that isn't there. And the stress, the loneliness, the quiet giving up can begin, slowly, to wear the real body down. A confident forecast can help to make itself come true. The prediction becomes a hand on your shoulder, pushing you gently toward the very future it warned you about. Picture that healthy person again, sitting in the doctor's office. On the screen, their twin is aging fast. Only this time, the simulation does not turn kind. The body develops an illness the real person does not have. It grows weaker, the treatments stop working, and then, in fast forward, it dies. They have just watched a version of their own death. The doctor says gently that it is only a forecast. One future out of many, not a promise. Please, do not take it as a promise. But something has already happened that cannot be undone. You cannot unsee your own ending. From that moment on, every headache feels like a beginning. Every ache, every tired morning, every ordinary bad day arrives carrying the same quiet question: is this it? Has it started? Is the machine coming true? The forecast was never meant to be a sentence, but the mind does not always know the difference. So, knowing all of that, how much of this is real, here, in our own time? Some of it, already. Researchers can read a genome and predict with real skill that certain people face higher risks of certain illnesses. The narrow world models we talked about a single organ, a single disease, are real and quietly improving. What no one can yet build is the thing at the center of this story, a complete living copy of one entire body, updated every day, trusted to speak about a whole life. But suppose for a moment that the machines of 2073 truly arrive, that all of those advances land, and the drift is tamed, and cause is understood, and the whole person really can be held inside a single simulation. Even then, something would remain beyond reach. Because a human being is not only biology. We are shaped by our genes, yes, but also by pure chance, by the places we happen to live, by measurements that are always a little incomplete, by stress and love and loss, and by processes that science still does not fully understand. A perfect simulator of an unpredictable thing is, in the end, still unpredictable. And there is one last truth that no amount of computing power will ever change. A machine can produce a future that is utterly convincing, clear, detailed, sure of itself, without that future being true. That gap between convincing and correct is the whole danger, and it does not close just because the picture grows sharper. So perhaps the question worth carrying isn't whether we can build this. Given enough time, we probably can, at least in part. The harder question is what it will do to us to live beside it, to wake each morning next to a version of ourselves that has already walked further down the road, to be shown a glimpse of an ending, and to remember, every single day, that a glimpse is not a fate. What happens when a machine comes to know your body better than any doctor ever could, and still does not know your future?